You are ready? Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Juma Mubarak, everyone. Inshallah, today we will continue reading from the 24th word, the 5th branch. We are now on page 368, at least on Risale, and inshallah, can share the link in the chat box as well. Okay. So this is, I believe, the third week that we have been reading from the 5th branch, which has been about the two faculties that the human being has of love and fear. And this 5th branch, the first fruit of it, has talked about these two faculties and how we should, as human beings, direct them, and how the experience that fear and love bring to us in this world, if we do not properly utilize them in terms of redirecting them and letting our object of love and fear be their source of existence instead of other creatures or other things, contingent things that exist in this world. So inshallah, I'll start reading, but I was looking through the email that Brother Yusuf sends almost every week, and as he said, he had provided a summary that I still think is very much applicable, and he had talked about in the email how, in this 24th word, we've been going through these various branches that have talked about the reflections of the beautiful names of the Creator, and the prophetic path, and how to make the most from the prophetic path. And as he wrote in the 4th branch of the tree, talking about how every being in existence responds and communicates with the Creator. And again, in this 5th branch now, up to the 3rd paragraph, last week we specifically talked about not only love, but also fear, and what it means for the human being to direct their sense of fear, feeling of fear, towards the Creator. And, just some things that I recollect from previous discussions is that we can't help but love things in the universe, and they lead us to question why we love them, and that despite our infinite love for these things, that they become ugly when they die and disappear, and if we don't connect them to their true, genuine source. And how, when I look at this universe, when I experience it, I see where it takes me, that I have a relationship with everything, that I have a sort of affection, interaction, love directed towards everything. There's no instance in which I don't care about something that I interact with. And so in some sense, everyone has a sense of love and relation towards the universe. And again, last week we talked about how fear and love must both be utilized. And in just connection to last week, one thing that I remember thinking was that I am constantly in a state of fear, whether I realize it or I don't. I don't think it's possible to live without fearing something, whether that fear is fearing the loss of love from other people, the fear of being deprived of some amenity in life, or a loss of status or wealth or anything. I am always, in a sense, trembling in fear of something. And I can either choose to be fearful of almost everything in this world and be forced to act and be driven by these numerous, endless fears, or choose to direct all that fear towards my creator. And in my understanding, at least, what makes sense to me, fear of loss of connection with him. For when I am only fearful of not being able to communicate with my creator, not being able to live in a way that connects me to him, then I become, in a sense, liberated from all other fears. Um, and and that fear, as Nursi wrote, um, that fear of God becomes almost pleasurable because it is liberating, because there's a sense of security in it. Um, that's just some rudimentary thoughts again from last week. Inshallah, we can start to read the second paragraph of, again, page 368 for me. And inshallah, let me begin. Indeed, man loves firstly himself, then his relations, then his nation, then living creatures, then the universe, and then the world. He is connected with all these spheres. He may receive pleasure at their pleasure and pain at their pain. However, since nothing is stable in this world of upheavals and revolutions swift as the wind, man's wretched heart is constantly wounded. The things his hands cling onto tear at them as they depart, even severing them. He remains in perpetual distress, or else plunges into heedless drunkenness. Since it is thus, my soul, if you have sense, gather together all these loves and give them to their true owner. Be saved from those calamities. These infinite loves are particular to one possessing infinite perfection and beauty. When you give it to its true owner, you will be able to love everything without distress, in his name and as his mirrors. That means this love should not be spent directly on the universe. Otherwise, while being a delicious bounty, it becomes a grievous affliction. I want to stop there so that we can discuss this paragraph, inshallah. Again, so far he's talked about, he began this first fruit of the fifth branch about how love is the cause of the existence of the universe, right? And that the human being is this fruit that is so capable of loving everything, of being in relation with everything, and having a heart that can infinitely love. And how a heart that is capable of infinite love can only be satisfied by an infinite one. And that if these feelings of love and fear are misdirected, that they only bring pain and suffering, and a lack of peace to someone. And I feel especially that this topic is so pertinent because we all love, we all experience love, whether it's love for a spouse or love for a parent or love for a friend, love for a cat, even just, I don't know, love for a car or something like that. The feeling of love is impossible to avoid. It's this feeling of love that really drives us to act in certain ways and pursue the things that we pursue. And it really determines a lot of the other emotions, I feel, that we experience time to time. And so here, the author is, I guess, presenting a sort of, I imagine as concentric circles, right? With um, the human being themselves being at the very core of that set of concentric circles, and then his relations. So these may be people that I have some sort of relationship with, my best friend, my sister, uh, my mom, um, my niece, people that I love. And then one concentric circle beyond this, he writes, is his nation, which I guess we can try to understand what is one's nation. Is it one's geographical origin? Is it one's um, patch of land that has certain borders and boundaries and is called something? Or is it something, maybe it is that, maybe. Um, or is it something a little bit more abstract, perhaps? And then beyond that circle is living creatures. And I guess, I mean, this could be just humans and animals and trees and anything really, and then the universe and the world. And I don't know, I mean, I don't really know exactly how to feel about this sort of order, because um, the universe and the world are these two separate things. Um, Technically, it seems like the universe is larger than the world. Um, so maybe he's just kind of trying to emphasize, give a sense of emphasis, but should we be directing specific attention to each of these sort of um, spheres of love that he is saying that human beings have? But perhaps more important than that, regardless of whatever spheres that we want to claim as our own or claim that exist for us, the human being is connected to all of these spheres. And in essence, that means I'm connected to everything that exists, anything that I have a relation with. I'm connected to the glass of water. I love the water. I love how satisfying it is. I love this pillow. I love how it feels against my achy body. Um, I love the sunlight. I love spending time with my friend. Um, I have a sense of love towards everything. At least I have a sense of relation, and that sense of love pervades a lot of those relations. But what do I do with this, Because I can't, it's almost like just immediate. I can't help it. I can't help but feel these things. Um, but how do I utilize this feeling, this strong, or sometimes overwhelming feeling, especially when I know that my friend will die, especially when I know that I will die, when I know that summer is ending and the gloomy winter, or maybe not gloomy winter, is coming. Um, how do I deal with these things? Uh, and he writes, "You may receive pleasure at their pleasure and pain at their pain," and that's something I feel I can definitely confirm, right? Because you know, I don't know if it's, maybe it's the sense of empathy that's given to us, but even I think, like, if one person starts laughing and another person starts laughing, other people literally start laughing just because those people are laughing. It's kind of contagious. And the emotions of especially our loved ones reflect back onto us. And we're happy when they're happy, and we're sad when they're sad. And we're all mirrors to each other in a sense. And we want um, people that we love to feel pleasure, and the world to be in a pleasurable state, as in, with no Amazon fires or global warming. We want things to be in a perfect state, I guess. And in that perfect state, be able to love them in this stable, steady, reliable way. but it's not reliable. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. As he writes, nothing is stable in this world of upheavals and revolutions, swift as the wind. There is so much constant change. Um, and, at least for myself, I go through that change day by day, and sometimes it feels very minute, but there's so much change and so much constantly going on. And um, you don't know if the people that you love will continue to love you. You want something that gives you a sense of security. You know, I may ask my mother on Monday, "Hey, do you love me?" And she'll say yes, but I'll still feel the need to, and true story, I'll still feel the need to ask her on Tuesday, "Hey, do you love me?" Um, because I want a reassurance that that love that I receive, that compassion I receive is steady and secure and reliable. I want to know that the things I love will love me back eternally. I want to be loved and be able to love in a way that does not make me feel vulnerable against their passing or departure. Because being able to direct love towards something, in a sense, means that I make myself vulnerable. I allow myself to love that thing and I do not want it to go away. I do not want it to betray me in any sense. I do not want it to be transient. That's the word we use. Um, but I can't secure that. And so I make myself open, I make myself exposed to feeling the wounds of that transience. Um, and I think that Nursi is just hitting at such a, I mean, this is just like a very human, I mean, it's such a human passage, I feel. Like man's wretched heart is constantly wounded. Um, because just the nature of the matter is that I am going to be constantly wounded because I'm loving things that are so unreliable in and of themselves if I just love them for themselves. There's no assurance, there's no reassurance that they will be there for me to love, or if they are capable of loving me back, will always be there to love me back. Um, and so there's that insecurity, there's that vulnerability, and there's that constant heartache, um, an open wound. And despite that, we still want to keep loving. We still want to continue to be able to love. Um, and anyone can feel free to interrupt me. I'm kind of just going line by line and sharing my own thoughts, um, which I hope are not superbly dull. But when he says the things his hands cling on to tear at them as they depart, even severing them, that imagery of it, it's like I'm trying to grab onto, let's say, this fruit and I want to eat that fruit or I want to enjoy it, but the fruit itself is so prickly that even as I try to grab it, it it tears at my fingers, it tears at my hands, it makes me bleed. And I try to take a pleasurable bite of it as my hand is bleeding. Um, this sort of uh, that sort of pain in the pleasure of it, in which almost kind of deprives it of it in the pleasure, um, in the first place. And so that sense, it's like if this world as I experience is just that, then it's just so painful because I didn't choose to be able to have such a capacity to love. I didn't choose to be able to have such relations, to be able to love everything, to be able to be in a relation to everything, to be able to love the sky and the sun and the flowers and people and things. I didn't choose to have these feelings, yet I do. And yet that feeling is just constantly dissatisfied because of the nature of things. And if that's all there is to it, then it's just like a really sick joke. um, and if it's evolutionary, then that's just terrible evolution. Not really directed towards with any regard to my human feelings. And so there's the question of what do I do with this feeling? What do I do with this ability to love? Um, and I want to, I want to make sure we return to like that first sentence of what does it mean for the human being to love, firstly, herself? What does it mean for me to love myself? Do I love myself? Um, I mean, I know a lot of people who really dislike themselves. If we're talking about physicality, there's so much people who hate their bodies. There's so much people who hate their faces. There's so much people who are constantly trying to change themselves physically because it's so hard to love one's, I guess, self if you define it. Do I love my qualities? There's so many people that feel insecure about their qualities. I'm not very happy with at least how I use my qualities, you know. I'm not happy, let's say, with maybe um, my lack of discipline or um, not being able to actualize certain potential I may feel. I mean, it just seems like does this loving myself mean a sort of narcissistic love, or how do I properly love myself without being narcissistic? Um, but yeah, I know that I want to live in a way, and I want to be able to utilize these feelings, and so maybe it means that. But that's something we can return to. I mean, for the sake of kind of remaining organized in my thoughts. And so this the first half of this paragraph is really dedicated to, I feel, presenting the situation and the problem, if you will. But before I continue further, I see that Brother Yusuf has his hand up, so please go ahead.
Just a very brief note about human loving himself or herself. There's also a version of love in which you love something so much, and since you cannot reach it, you start hating it so much at the same time, because this love becomes source of your torture. It is as if, let's say, let's speak practical. So you want to get married with this boy or girl, whatever, or just you're trying to attract their attention, and it's just simply not working out. You cannot have it. Then it grows so much in you that you start hating that person, because it's not that you're not appreciating that beauty, but that it's not yours. You cannot grasp it. It's as the author is saying in here, it is escaping away from within your hands. And I guess this is pretty much how the whole life is. There are things that gives us pleasure, and this is why we love them. But just think about youth. It is, although as beautiful it is, it just simply goes away from your hands. So how do I cope with this? So I guess in such a case, just hating it is how I sort of console myself, so that I'm not going to go nuts and just say that, well, I hate it, it's not good, I'm denying its beauty, or I'm trying to see lack of beauty in it just to justify my situation. So in this regards, yes, people might hate themselves, but this hate in there is again stemming from self-love, or there is a self-image that I want to see myself in, and then since I am not fitting into that picture, I start hating myself. So I guess again, it's again me not being able to fit that beautiful picture that I am picturing myself in. So again, out of my self-love, I despise myself. So along these lines, I guess, even if it's a hate, it's again stemming from this false love.
Thank you, Brother Yusuf, for that contribution and thought. Yeah, I mean, I think along some maybe similar lines, your examples just made me think, just very, I hope this doesn't offend anyone. I mean, why should it? Just very basic example, there are some group of people, like men, because they can't receive any love or they can't, either get married or have any sort of relationship, they become misogynist. They start hating women because they somehow feel like they are deserving of a love and aren't given that. And it turns into a sort of hate, sort of destructive anger. and I'm sure, you know, the same might go for the other gender, in which there becomes a sort of hate of that other group of people, or hate of that thing, you know, if you can't have it. And ultimately, I think, as you said, this comes from um, really a seed of despising oneself, because there is the notion, there is the expectation of what it should be like, that picture of perfection that you can imagine, but is somehow not graspable. Um, and I think, you know, in another part, as Nursi was saying, that sort of love becomes so oppressive. It oppresses one's own self and the object that that love is trying to be directed towards. It becomes a type of oppressive love that, when it can't find reciprocation, when it can't find gratification, it turns on both the person trying to love and the person that is attempted to be loved, or the thing attempted to be loved. Um, and so these, both of these, you know, sort of misutilizations, they just leave us with a lot of pain. These are very painful states, because it's contrary to the state that I know is possible, but I can't be in, and the state that I, as a human being, um, will feel at ease in. So thank you for that. If anyone else has any other comments, they're welcome to share them, um, especially if they want to talk about, you know, how they understand the idea of man loving firstly himself or his relations and his nation, living creatures, universe, and the world, and the sort of connection that human beings have with all these spheres that we direct our love towards, and the ways in which this directed love can be very painful and very wounding, um, and very unfruitful in some sense. Abdurrahman, you can go ahead.
So I was like, the sentence that caught my attention was the first sentence where, or how man loves himself and relations, nation, and then, you know, universe, the world. However, then Nursi says that, like, we receive pleasure at their pleasure. Like when I see, let's say, other things in this universe, other things in the world are going well, or let's say I even look at like something out in space, or I look at the moon, or just something very far away from me, still I have like, I can feel love towards it, or pleasure at its pleasure when something happens there. And then like pain at their pain. Let's say I watch a documentary about anything, and I see an animal getting killed, or I see a rainforest, you know, being like destroyed in the past 100 years. You know, it's so far away from me, yet that emotion is so close to me. I can feel pain, even though something is so far away from me. Like when I see its pain and its struggle. Or like you could look at, you know, like the ocean, or you can look everywhere basically. Like it's just, we are so comprehensive as humans that really we can look at everything and have some type of emotional relationship with it. At least this is maybe how we should be. But then now I'm looking at myself and I'm thinking, do I really, you know, do I care about, like, let's say my nation, or do I care about really all the people that are around me in their daily lives, or do I care about all the politics that's happening and all the other just random nonsense or random stuff that are happening around the world? You know, and then I see that sometimes, like, I'm kind of almost hesitant to even think about it, to even worry about it, or like hesitant to think about, let's say something's happening around the world that are less than nice, that are painful to even think about. So I have to ignore it. So I realized like it's in my nature, or I've been created in such a way that I can have a relationship with everything. But then there are things that I don't want to have a relation with, so I cut myself off from them. Like I cut myself off from wanting to have a relationship with the rest of the world, seeing what's happening around the world, or I cut myself from wanting to deal with like the struggles of people around me, or things like that. Like I see that because I have been creating a way that I can get pleasure from their pleasure and pain from their pleasure, pain from their pain. Like my response, you know, if my incorrect response is then to stop being human, because I stopped trying to feel those things. I stopped trying to experience those things. I stopped trying to have that relationship with those things. My response is, okay, I'll stop caring about them, you know. Like there's like a way of living where stoicism, where you just like try to imagine the worst thing possible and say, okay, that's going to be okay, or just try not to get any try not to have any feelings towards anything, just be okay with everything. You know, just have no feelings, like be be not human, basically, when you don't have feelings, you know, just like a rock. So that just caught my attention, how we are created to feel, we are created to have relationships with everything, and like this is a good thing. Like when I get angry at something that happens, for example, you know, very easy example, so let's say politics, like something I've just tried to avoid, but like let's say something happens and I get angry about politics, and then like you get heated about it, or you know, it just boils your blood a bit, and you're just like, why do I care about this? You know, I just stopped caring about this. This is like you know, it's not going to bring me any good, it's just pain. But then also it's human to care about things like this. It's human to care about things that are happening around you. You know, you can't, it's hard to just ignore, because you're a human and you're created in a way to be able to experience everything. So what's more important, I'm realizing, is being able to, you know, it's not the pleasure and the pain. Like you should, when you see the pleasure there, when you see a pain in the things that you see in the universe or around you, like you should be able to utilize that pleasure and pain for its purpose. Like what's the purpose of these things existing? What's the purpose of this pleasure and this pain from this one thing? How can I utilize that feeling? Like let's say I see a forest burning down, or I see some terrible tragedy happening, or a flood or earthquake. Like how can I actually like embrace that feeling, and then how can I then like see that, you know, this pains me, and I see like my impotence there, my neediness there, and I see how weak I am, and how can I then take this feeling and be like, oh, I am in need. Like I'm not an independent being that can just remain alone and somehow make it through this world. Like I do have problems, like I have very great problems that afflict me, so I need someone to help me from these problems when I face these pains, which I should face. I shouldn't try to escape them. I am in need of someone to help me from them. And I think this is like, as you approach it, like this kind of mindset where you realize your impotence because these pains make you realize it, then it will take you to the purpose of what these pains and pleasures are meant to be, or meant to take you to. Yeah, those are just my thoughts.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. Yeah, a lot of what you says resonates with me really strongly. I think, as you said, I have to be able to read the feeling that I have properly. Be able to read it and extract from it the meaning that it carries, and see how that meaning, what it tells me, what it communicates to me from the one that is also creating that feeling and creating that meaning. And true story, several years ago, several years ago, I used to be very adamant about reading the news. I would read every single morning. As soon as I woke up, I would open up 10 different news websites, and I would read all the headlines and all the articles, and that's how I would start my day, you know, to stay informed. And I did this for a long time. And eventually I completely stopped because, I mean, besides like the earthquake after earthquake, or war after war, or suffering after suffering, or the number of people dead after dead, and the number of things that are going wrong, which for all of them I would feel very strongly, I developed a sense of apathy. Because when you start to feel all of that constantly, a coping mechanism becomes, let me just stop embracing these feelings, because there's the sense of neediness and impotence of not being able to do anything, and yet having that sort of relation with everything in the world. And so one response is a sense of apathy, stop caring. And perhaps the other extreme, I don't know, is completely just divorcing oneself from the world. But I mean, that's the truth of it. Like, I can't help but feel pain at pain and feel pleasure at pleasure. But as you said, I have the choice to be able to feel what I feel, embrace what I feel, and try to read it, try to understand it, and try to take it and ask, what is the purpose of this feeling? What is this going to tell me about my existence? What is going to tell me? What is this going to describe to me about the one who is creating this experience for me? Brother Yusuf, please go ahead.
I just want to highlight one thing that Abdurrahman has mentioned. So this text seems to be emphasizing love and fear for human. So comparing this with like the previous fourth branch, which was talking about worship. So it looks like author is saying that these two feelings are so central in humans' relationship in this existence that as if this is how I'm going to either interact with the existence or with the source of existence. If Abdurrahman was mentioning how to properly use them. So it looks like if I improperly use those two feelings and just as if I just open my eyes and since love I am programmed to love or I am programmed to have fear of something, I open my eyes and immediately my love as if falls upon something. The first beautiful things that it sees, my love just clings to it. It looks like love in this sense is involuntary. But as author is very beautifully describing in here, it becomes a source of torture for me though, if I don't know how to utilize it. And now going back to the previous four branches. So why am I in here, in this existence? So the author has been talking about it so far. And when I read this fifth branch, if I don't take into account the four previous branches, it sounds like he's very beautifully describing human tragedy. But if I take the previous four branches into account and located with the purpose of man in this existence, and also what is this universe? Like the universe is manifestation of those names, beautiful names of the Creator. And human is in here to read those beautiful names and also to interact with the source of those names. So interact with the Creator, respond back to the Creator. Then the question becomes, okay, how am I going to do that? Or what is my capital for doing that? And the author is saying that again, look back to yourself. You will see that your love and fear are the most strong two feelings that you have. And with this, you interact with the existence. And since you utilize it improperly, you're suffering very badly. But using the same two feelings and properly utilizing them is how you are going to not only get saved from this, but also reach the satisfaction that you're looking for. This, using again these two feelings, you are going to properly respond back to the most beloved one, or the one that is worthy of love, that is truly worthy of love. So this is, I guess, how, as if he is defining that worship for you, meaning realizing your neediness and responding back to the one that provides you, is very much centered around this feeling of love and fear and how properly you utilize them. And if you don't do that, it's not like, well, you're neutral. No. On the other end, what you're experiencing is the pain that we all very well know. So as if he is saying, if you don't want to stay in this hard condition that you find yourself in, just reconsider how you are utilizing these two feelings and go and worship to your creator. How am I going to do that? Because this is why he is tying it back to eventually, if you love God, follow me, then God will love you. This is, I guess, the how question is then going to be answered.
Thank you, Brother Yusuf, for that comment. I think that really grounds what we're reading within the context of this larger 24th word, and how we can really try to understand it in the framework that is being presented to us, in this larger framework that's being presented to us. Yeah, thank you. That was very helpful for me. Would anyone else like to say anything? If so, just feel free to make a comment or raise your hand. I'll continue on my train of thought until I run out of things to say. So as I was saying, I think, in this paragraph that we're looking at now, in the first half of the paragraph, it kind of presents the situation, right, that we are faced with. And as Brother Yusuf was saying, that within the context of this universe being a manifestation of the beautiful names of the Creator, and trying to answer the question of how do I go about in comprehending, reading, communicating with those names. This faculty of love is given to me in such a way where if I utilize it properly, it becomes a beautiful line of communication. And if not, as Nursi has spelled out so far, the misproper utilization of it, the wounds and the traumas that it inflicts really on me as a human being. And I think everyone can understand this in their own way, within the context of their own lives, within the context of their own experiences, within the context of the things that they love. And so he's outlined the various ways in which, one, the very fact that it's inevitable that I have all these relations with myself, with my family and loved ones, with whatever concept of nation I have, with living creatures, with the world around me. And the fact that, as Abdurrahman was emphasizing, that I'm in a sort of frequency with them. My feelings arise and reflect what is going on, and are a mirror to their pleasure and their pain. And in conjunction with all of this, I'm left in a state initially where I'm overwhelmed with the feeling, I'm overwhelmed with their departure, with the departure of things, and I remain in perpetual distress or plunge into heedless drunkenness. I was driving today, and I was driving into New Jersey, and part of New Jersey is very famous for its casinos. And there was a billboard that said, "Welcome back to Escape," or something like that. Yeah, it said like, "Welcome back to your escape." And I was like, wow, at least they're very transparent about what they're trying to be for their customers. And that's a sort of heedless drunkenness, that I feel so much and I prefer to just not be conscious of it. Or I feel so much that I prefer to not even try to feel it, apathy. So in one way or another, I am the very subject of this, even if I don't go to casinos, I may gamble with my own feelings and gamble with the way in which I interact with things that leaves me intoxicated or leaves me unfeeling, or leaves me refusing to engage with them properly, refusing to read them properly, refusing to use that feeling of love in such a way that is meaningful and thoughtful and reflective. And so Nursi says, since it is thus, my soul, if you have sense, gather together all those loves and give them to their true owner. Be saved from those calamities. And I guess I can ask the question of, what does it mean to give them to their true owner? So do I just gather, it's not like these are a bunch of cherries that I pluck from a tree and I put them in a basket and I give it to the, I don't know, apparently owner of the farm or something. How do I gather these loves and give them to God, if that's the true owner? How do I do that? What does that mean in my practical life? How does that mean in the way I love things, people? What does giving back these loves to their true owner mean now in the next hour when I interact with my friend or I interact with my husband? How is it supposed to change that? How is it modifying it? In which practical sense can I carry that out? Is it something that I just sort of sort out in my consciousness? Is there like an element of it that I can put into action in a very tangible sense? What does that mean? I think this question, at least for me, is really important because it's so practical. Beza, you had your hand up. I'll leave the mic to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for the comments so far. In regards to what you've last pointed out in the conversation that's kind of led up to this point about, I find myself in a state of being where I am connected to, I have a relationship with everything within the universe, whether or not I'm consciously aware of it. The moment I become aware of something, as Abdul Rahman was saying, maybe a rainforest or a certain species of animals, whatever, it may be all the way on the other side of the earth, or it could even be out of this universe. It could be like in outer space. But I still find myself in a state of having some sort of relationship with it. So I find myself that I am bound to it in some way. There's something in it that resonates with what is within me. And I was just thinking, like, what is it that makes me care for, I don't know, penguins that may be mistreated, or human beings, or injustices, or whatever the case is. And I think when I look at it, like the core, at least the crux of the love that I feel, or the relationship that I find myself within these things, it's always, and maybe like one may say we overuse it, but this these qualities that I find within the penguin, for example, or within the flower, or within the rainforest, something is beautiful, something is cute, something is, there's so much wisdom in the way it's created, there's so much mercy, there's so much compassion. There are these qualities in it that attract me. And when I see, news lines or headlines of newspapers, then I see the lack of certain qualities, which I have already been given the sense of the perfection of within myself. So I feel that lacking there. And that can be very despairing if I don't know how to make sense of it. So I think at the crux of this love that I feel, that I find myself feeling with all of these things, is it always somehow ties back to the qualities that they manifest, whether or not I'm consciously aware of this connection that I'm making, that I'm sensing. It's like I have a detector within myself, and I sense it automatically, and I might not even be conscious of it. The sense of justice, or the sense of beauty, or the sense of compassion, whatever the case is. And so I think what you were last highlighting, Aisha Noor, about giving the true owner back or loving things in his name, or giving these loves back to him, it must be related to, once I recognize what it is that I love within those things, I guess it has to do with the consciousness behind recognizing that which I love is not, I mean, what I love about it is the qualities that is manifested on it. Because if you take the beauty out of a flower, or, you know, the manifestations of beauty, order, wisdom, compassion, all of these things, it's, I mean, in a one way, it no longer becomes a flower, but it no longer becomes lovable. There's nothing in it for me to detect. And there's everything that exists has some sort of quality, even like soil, you know, like the way it perfectly functions as like the seedbed of all different sorts of plants, and the way it soaks up the rain, the way that, you know, worms and other bugs can live underneath it. I don't know, like it's so much. I mean, it astounds me, and there's so much wonder even in something that's I take for granted often. And so I think it's the love of those qualities that I find myself attracted to. But if I don't realize that, then I can say I love this soil itself, the material soil itself, if we're going to make a distinction to make it easier on the mind, rather than the quality. So returning the loves to its true owner, I guess, you know, recognizing that the qualities that I find myself already with a sense of connection to is not from the things themselves. You know, those are the things that I really love. You know, if my mother wasn't compassionate to me, and if all these lovable qualities that I see in her were taken away from her, then what else is there left to love in a way? Or what else is there for me to be attracted to that situation? And even in something that I find ugly or unpreferable to myself, you know, even that, like lack of justice looks to the sense of justice. So even in the dislikes, there's a love of something else, the opposite of whatever it is that I'm witnessing, that I'm being, that it's saying to me, hey, you don't like this, but you love the opposite of this. That's what this situation is reminding you of. And it's the quality there that that I may not be able to witness in its full perfection, that I already have a sense of within myself that I find lacking and that I find myself attracted to. So I think it has to do with, you know, recognizing that I love these qualities, not the things themselves, and also that that in realizing that it is the qualities that I'm attracted to, questioning the source of existence, as we often say, of those qualities.
Thank you, Ishbeza, for that very spirited comment. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I think just on your last note, as you were saying that, I mean, first, I definitely agree with you that I have that love for everything in the universe, even if I am not super aware of it or hyper aware of it or conscious of it. It's there when I do become aware of it, right? I watch these documentaries, I see the cheetahs running, and I'm kind of rooting for it, but I kind of also don't want like the other animal to die, but then I become sad if the cheetah has no food for its cubs. And, you know, it's just, I love things. And on your last note, what I wanted to focus on was, you were saying that one way of going about it is recognizing that I love the qualities in a person rather than perhaps that person themselves, or connecting those qualities to the source of existence, to the creator. But I think it becomes very difficult to differentiate between, like, what is a person beyond their qualities? You know, if I guess, like, I remember from like elementary school and beyond, at least when I was younger, like a lot of the activities that we would do in class would be like, describe yourself. Who are you? And then you would have to pick like 10 adjectives to describe yourself. I am smart, I am hardworking, I am kind, I am caring. And I don't know, from like a very young age, it becomes sort of indoctrinated that you are I mean, besides the whole physical aspect of it, that's another issue, but you are these qualities that you define and see in yourself. And there's a sense of ownership over such qualities, you know? I am caring, I am loving, I am helpful. And the way someone defines themselves, they inevitably define another person. So if I'm thinking about my lovely friend Zainab, for example, I'll think, who's Zainab? She is kind, she is caring, she's compassionate, she's sociable, you know, and these are qualities that I associate with her. But if I don't know how would I go about in separating her from these qualities? If I separate these qualities from her, she's not her anymore. And I understand that what I love is those qualities, right? And those qualities are given. They are a beautiful mirror to the beautiful names, beautiful attributes of the Creator. But I guess I'm still a little bit confused. I don't know if I've made my own dilemma a little opaque, but Brother Yusuf, you can go ahead.
So if you were to give the example about not your friend Zainab, but about a rose, would you feel the same problem or not? Would you say that, for instance, if I take away the redness in a rose, beauty in a rose, or whatever attributes you can talk about the rose, and you separate them and give them to their true owner, and then there's no roses left, were you going to feel the same problem as you're right now trying to word, I guess, when it comes to your human friend Zainab? What do you think?
So if I try to separate a rose from its redness or its beauty, or from its prickliness, or from the way it makes me feel and how I feel when I look at it, I mean, I don't know, my impulse, I haven't thought thoroughly, but my impulse would be to say, what is a rose without its petals and its prettiness and its redness? And it seems like those qualities, you know, there's no abstract entity of rose. These are the qualities that I directly interact with, and then in its compilation called rose.
Yes, so I think this is the point. So we are imagining some sort of a self in things which is there in and of itself. And then we put those attributes on top of this thing to the extent that even we say it belongs, like all those properties, attributes belong to this abstract notion, abstract agency in there. We do this for the rose, we do this for the tree, we do this for humans, especially for myself. I say I do exist in and of myself, and those qualities that I have belong to me. So the things like success, or I don't know, anything that comes out of my hand as I would consider to be good, I say these belong to me. But apparently the author is saying that, is this really the case? What is it that belongs to you, and what is it that belongs to things themselves? Which I believe is a quite different worldview. What author's suggesting in here is a totally different worldview. And it might be relatively easier to adopt when it comes to rose outside. We can say that, yeah, from beginning to end, this rose is manifestation of beautiful names. It's all about the Creator's creation. how do I feel about it when it comes to myself? This is where a bigger challenge is going to happen. What do you mean that I don't have anything? I don't own anything? What do you mean that there is no I in and of myself? This is hard to grasp intellectually, but even more challenging than the intellectual grasping is to admit it. I mean, even if I were to intellectually find a way to explain what it means that there is no me in and of myself, it's really hard to live with it. It's really hard to digest and submit to such a thing. And I guess this is where the author, as he is saying, collect all those loves and give them to their true owner. What does that mean is don't love things as if they have value in and of themselves, as if they, like a funny example that comes to my mind was, let's say brother Abdurrahman made a nice comment, and just for the sake of funny example, let's assume brother Birkan just whispered those comments to Abdurrahman's ear. And Abdurrahman, he himself being that not so elaborate person, he just repeated these, and I said, wow, such a beautiful comment. So, and then I said, okay, I need to go and follow Abdurrahman wherever he takes me to. And I become a devout follower of Abdurrahman. But then Brother Birkan just separates his ways with Abdurrahman. So I am left with Abdurrahman as Abdurrahman is, which means there is no more comments, no more beautiful comments. It's just, for the sake of example, nonsensical mumbo jumbo. So this is what we are practically experiencing in this existence. We are taking things on the face value and thinking that what I receive from things belong to themselves. And then I start appreciating the thing itself. But once the connection is cut, I am left with the thing itself, which is sort of nothing. I mean, the thing that I fell in love is not there anymore because the connection's cut. So it's hard to, first to me, to intellectually understand it, but beyond that, it is overly hard or challenging for me to submit to and live with such a perspective. And by the way, sorry, Abdurrahman, for using you as an example.
Thank you so much, Brother Yusuf. I really enjoyed that. I want to give the microphone directly to Brother Mohammed Said as well. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for all the comments. Although the things that are reflected in my world is a little bit outside of the subject or the question that is being discussed at this moment. Although I really benefited, and also I think it is a fundamental point to raise about the qualities and being itself and the qualities on that being. Is there such thing, two different things? What got my attention in this text is this beings departing. I think the author is also inviting me to focus on the reality that yes, the things are here. I'm here, and I'm being changed, and my being doesn't belong to me, and the qualities that are reflected on me, they are constantly being given to me. But in my experience, there is a moment or an experience that I call departing. The qualities are leaving from my experience in a physical sense. And I think what got my attention is that when I see the activity that is taking place in the universe as the will must be the will of the owner of the universe, it includes the departing beings departing too. That is, as an activity, it is then it is possible for me to still observe and connect it to the owner of this activity, to the owner of the beings, like a person who's with me, and then their time comes, and then he is departing. If what I am getting from this paragraph is that that activity, being that person being departed, is the activity of the owner of the universe. It is a chance, an opportunity for me to confirm the reality that his will is only in action. There's nothing else. There's no one holding his qualities on himself. And it is, timing belongs to him, and the qualities on the person or on the things belong to him. It is the reflection of the qualities of the owner of the universe. So departing, instead of feeling distressed, as the author says, departing becomes a reminder of the owner of the universe, or the will of the owner of the universe, and then it turns into a taste of the infinite one. So then everything, possibly every action in the universe coming into existence or leaving, having a strong tooth or having a broken tooth, becomes the reminder and highlighting the same reality that the creator of the universe is, his will is preventing everywhere, and I observe this, that then it becomes a means for me to be connected, even the event of departure. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Mohammed Said. I think that's a really beautiful point. The notion of departure, the very transience, the very passing of things itself is a reminder that the will of the creator of the universe is present, that it's reflected in that very event as well. And that it is a pointer, a signpost to the same reality that the creation of something and the presence of something points to as well. I was thinking that in addition to being a reminder, I mean, the very departure, the very fact that the things that I love and the things that I attach myself to and the things that I choose to appreciate and have relations with, the very fact that they are transient, that they depart, and that this is the will of their source of existence, shows to me that it's such a merciful will. It's an event of mercy, because in that departure I am still being brought to him. In the experience of almost feeling the wound, right, or the pain of something's transience, I am experiencing mercy as well. That mercy pervades it, because that mercy, that experience, that apparent pain brings me and connects me and reminds me and points me to my Lord. And that in itself, I think is divine mercy, manifestation of it. Brother Mohammed said, would you like to say something? Or is the hand raised? Okay, so it's from another time. Okay. Again, thank you for the beautiful comment. And again, thank you, Brother Yusuf, for the comment before that as well. I think that really reflected the reality that everything that I love, that I feel love towards, it's just nothing but a compilation of qualities reflecting, they're manifestations of divine qualities. That's really genuinely what I love. And then, it made me ask to myself, why do I choose to love something or someone? Is it if and only if they reflect certain qualities? If the rose stops being beautiful, will I still love it? If my mother stops being compassionate, as Ichbeza was also pointing out, will I then stop loving her? Is my love dependent on the condition that they reflect such qualities? And I think maybe that's where the utilization of will and choice comes in. I can love someone because they choose to consistently reflect certain divine qualities, that they choose to be a polished mirror to that. And that's where the choice comes. And I can recognize that quality does not belong to them, but that they are, and this is perhaps a messy topic, but that they are still somehow exemplifying a certain will, a certain choice, even if that which I love does not belong to them. Thank you. So as we continue, we can look at where the text takes us, inshallah. So he had written, since it is thus, my soul, if you have sense, gather together all those loves and give them to their true owner. And their true owner being the one that is their source of existence, the one that creates that quality and creates the experience I have with that certain quality. Be saved from those calamities. And really, I think when I do direct them to their true owner, I stop oppressing myself and the person, because I don't expect it from them. In a sense, they're not the one creating it. I don't oppress them with the love of expectation. And maybe there's somehow, I'm not sure exactly, a way to connect that back to the self-love that human being has, how to properly utilize that aspect of it. I want to continue. These infinite loves are particular to one possessing infinite perfection and beauty. These infinite loves are particular to one possessing infinite perfection and beauty, right? I have infinite capacity, infinite love for these things, and they can be fully realized in one that is also infinite, and infinite in their perfection and infinite in their beauty. When you give it to its true owner, you will be able to love everything without distress in his name as his mirrors. When you give it to its true owner, you will be able to love everything without distress in his name and as his mirrors. Yeah, I think again, this is emphasizing that to love something in the name of God is to recognize that it is manifestation of my Creator's qualities, that it is not the thing from the thing itself. And if I can genuinely practice that, I can carry with me a sense of security, because I know that even if that person deprives me of a certain sense of love, even if my cat does not return my love, even if my niece says I don't love you or something like that, or the rose dies, I can be secure because I know that the quality that I had experienced is still ever present in the infinite one. And I won't ever be genuinely deprived of it. H. Beza, please go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you. Very helpful comments to me. Along the lines of what you last shared, I was thinking about how, like, you know, my love for the things or my relationships, as much as I may not want it to be, are very conditional. I don't think I have ever in a relationship where I show love unconditionally. Because even if someone, as you were saying, utilizes their free will not to reflect a certain quality, and I still choose to, for example, help them, even if they may be uncompassionate towards me or they may be mean towards me, even in that action, there is a sort of mercy or compassion that is being reflected in me in that instance, which I love again. So there is never a sort of relationship, even if I may call it unconditional, I end up being the recipient of a feeling, of a quality somehow that I am in love with, that I receive, even if the opposing party, you know, especially with human to human relationships, where it gets a little bit more tricky because of free will, even in those sort of relationships, even if they choose not to utilize their will in a way that, you know, as you were saying, polish their mirrors in a way where I can see those qualities beautifully or clearly, even if that's not the case, I'm still, if I choose to act in a certain way, then I can still be, I'm in love with the qualities that are being, or I'm attracted to, or I find beautiful the qualities that can be manifested in me, depending on the situation. So I think, like, with creation to creation relationships, there's never such a thing as unconditional. It can only become unconditional as in the case where the author says, these infinite loves are particular to one possessing infinite perfection and beauty, right? So the emphasis there being on infinite, infinite, infinite. Otherwise, you know, even if I think I love if I love someone for the qualities that they manifest, then I know deep down that, you know, that they may choose, as Aishan or you were saying, like, you know, feeling that need for security, asking, you know, do you love me or whatever to your mom one day after the other, or whatever the case is, you know, that the recurrence of that need again because of the need for the permanence of that quality. So in my loving of a created being, I know, I would say that I deep down, I know, no matter how much I might love it, that it may turn around and betray me. And at the end of the day, I too am loved with this sense of existence. And I know that I'm going to die, right? So even that can bring upon does bring a dilemma, unless, as you were saying, I become secure in the realization that the source of these qualities are infinite, and that I will be, and that I am being, that I am benefiting from this infinite source, and this infinite source will continue to treat me as such in a perfect form, regardless of my form in existence.
Thank you, H. Beza, for that lovely additional comment. These comments really add color and life and vigor to the discussion. So we have a few minutes left. So if anyone wants to, you know, present their final thoughts or conclusions, I would encourage them to do so in the coming minute or two. So this paragraph ends by saying, as you read, when you give it to its true owner, you will be able to love everything without distress in his name and as his mirrors. That means this love should not be spent directly on the universe. And, it caught my attention that it doesn't say, it doesn't say this love should not be spent on the universe. It's just saying don't spend this love directly on the universe. Recognize that everything that you love, that experience, that feeling points to a source. And all of this is given in conjunction with the context of this larger 24th word to be able to read everything that's to be able to read the manifestations of the beautiful names of the Creator, and to be able to accept a guide that shows you how to utilize these qualities and these feelings in a way in which you can read your experiences properly. Because the alternative, perhaps, as Abdurrahman was saying, could be a sort of stoicism. I don't love, or I don't want to love anything or have feeling of anything in this universe. But that's very contrary to the way I find myself in this universe. And finally, he says, otherwise, while being a delicious bounty, it, as in otherwise, while this love is a delicious bounty, it becomes a grievous affliction. Yeah, it can be a seed that grows into a tree of contentment and peace and understanding, or one that just offers affliction after affliction, basically. Really, it's about how I choose to read those feelings and think about them and reflect on everything that's happening and read those qualities and not misappropriate them or appropriate them incorrectly, but choose to connect them back to their Creator. So that's all I have to say. Let me give a minute or two, not a minute or two, but like a few seconds for anyone who wants to say something. Okay, well, thank you everyone for wonderful discussion, for contributing with your thoughts or contributing with your presence and listening. I really enjoyed it. Ganjam Mubarak. Abdurrahman, can you do the closing dua for us, inshallah?
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.